Welcome back to the Hidden History Happy Hour, everyone. Season 3, Episode 2. Huge thanks to everyone who enjoyed our last episode, which jumped into the top 5 YouTube's episodes ever for the Hidden History Happy Hour. Thank you so much. We got a huge show for you today. There's a BC movie review coming up. We're going to do a discussion of our great new sponsor, Wolf Project Men Skincare. We're going to talk a lot about them. But Alex, our fans know that we love a good couple stories about going to see a naval daring do. And that's what we have today. And I would be drinking rum, except for I happen to be in Sonoma, California, big wine country. That's why the background's
Right.
different. And I happen to have found a nice red blend with my family's name on it. So how can I not be drinking that today? This is actually excellent, you guys. Zena Hyde Cunningham. It's called Viola. I don't know whether you can get it outside the US, but it's excellent. Alex, what are you
What are
drinking?
the grapes?
We have Zinfandel, and we have Mourvedre, and we
Right.
have a little bit of Cab Franc also.
Okay.
Excellent.
That's a nice blend. I'm drinking brandy, which I will confess to you, I grabbed from the cupboard thinking it was rum. I was
Rum,
looking.
brandy, whatever. I'm sure
I,
sailors have drunk brandy at some
I,
point.
I was getting set up on short notice, and I seized this thinking it was rum, and it is in fact supermarket own brand brandy.
Fantastic.
Just
Napoleon
showing my
brandy.
classy
Also,
status.
I will just take this opportunity to say, Brandy, you're a fine girl. What a good wife
Mm.
you would
That's a great song.
be.
It's a one-hit wonder.
Amazing tune. Yeah.
Vina Silva from the north of Spain. And it's been a while since we've had a tale of naval daring do. So tot of brandy, tot of rum, and here comes the tale of Operation Source. German battleship Tirpitz, pride of the Kriegsmarine. We're in the Second World War for this story. The Tirpitz was some 2,000 tons, I'm just not making a mistake, 2,000 tons heavier than her sister ship, the Bismarck, which probably nowadays is a bit more famous, but
Yeah.
because the Germans made some adaptations to the Tirpitz for wartime after she launched, and she was therefore the heaviest battleship ever built by a European navy at the time. She was just surpassed later by HMS Vanguard, but the point is, it's a big beast, and the Tirpitz was a symbol of totemic pride for the Nazi war machine. And such was her status that Hitler repeatedly personally intervened, always a terrible idea for a political leader, to limit her use, which rather stymied her effectiveness because the Fuhrer insisted that she would not be exposed to danger, which rather defeats the point of having a battleship. Ships are safe in the harbour, but that's not what ships are for. And he was especially concerned that she would not be exposed to aircraft carriers. So the Tirpitz was deployed less often and less effectively than the German naval command would have wished. But the point is, she was a powerful presence in the calculations made by both sides in the deadly fencing and probing as the Allies sought to bring material to Russia via the Atlantic convoys and the Germans sought to prevent that. There's an interesting term in naval warfare, a fleet in being, a naval force that of such significance that even when she's in port or that force is in port, she changes enemy plans, tying up
Right.
ships that could be deployed elsewhere, because you're trying to guard against the risk of her sailing and changing the balance of power in the arena. And such was the Tirpitz. So all in all, the Allies needed to get at the Tirpitz. Britain tried to bomb her several times, but the defences were strong in the Norwegian ports, and all that we had to show for our efforts were lost Halifax bombers. So necessity, especially in war, being the mother of invention, we turned to a new capability, midget submarines. And Brian, you had to be brave as hell to get into one of
Yeah.
these things. If something, basically anything, went wrong, you were all but guaranteed to be done for.
And the
Ping,
Japanese found this out at Pearl Harbor. They lost 4 or 5 of them.
yeah, right. So you ping off the hull the wrong way and you spring a leak, dead. You take a single shot that penetrates, dead. Um, these are about 50 feet long, which is not a big submarine. The X-class midget submarines were towed behind normal submarines until they reached the area in which they would be deployed. Crews, they started off with three men, commander, pilot, engineer, and they later added a diver. So it started off at three and they went to four in this tiny space. 3, 4 men would then be transferred to them by dinghy. And British planned to use 6 midget submarines against the Tirpitz and the other German ships that were moored alongside her, berthed there. But 2 sank on the way, rather demonstrating the point that these things are not safe. One with the loss of all hands, one with the loss of the crew that had already been transferred to her, and demonstrating too, by the way, the requirement for great bravery in doing this. First toast to the men who died on the way.
Yeah, RIP. And unfortunately, we used the title Enormous Stones for our last episode, so we
Right.
can't use that again, but it equally applies to these men.
Those guys, they gave their lives in the service to their country and to freedom, and they died in a tiny tin can off the coast of Norway, and they're almost completely unremembered. So, Vale. So anyway, there it was, only 4 midget submarines went into the harbour, and my Norwegian pronunciation is famously great, but I think it's Kafford. Cover of darkness, September evening, 1943. Outcome of war still uncertain. One X-class of the 4 developed mechanical problems and had to turn back. So we're down to 3 midget submarines now. This was not as bad as it might have been because we didn't know this. Such was the imperfect intelligence people had during the war. This is before satellite photography. It's before overflights. We didn't know that the Scharnhorst, another powerful ship, was out on exercises, which reduced the potential target list for these submarines. Midget or not, the Germans were many things in the Second World War, but they weren't dummies, and
Yeah.
the midget submarines were spotted. One promptly sunk by the Tirpitz's guns. So we're now down to 2 midget submarines, but of course, hands lost in that sinking. Both of those remaining midget submarines successfully placed their charges upon the Tirpitz. And here's the most remarkable thing about this story: both crews survive, are captured by the Germans, and standing on the deck of the Tirpitz, right? And then on the shore, waiting for these bombs to go off, and they don't say anything, right?
Amazing.
And it's very soon after they are captured, these explosions tear through the Tirpitz. She takes on 1,000 tons of water, and the speed of literally tons of water rushing into a battleship, and lists in the harbour. Her machinery is damaged, her weaponry is damaged. These midget submarines have done all this. Repairs to the Tirpitz take more than 6 months. And finally, when they've done the repairs, our aviation capabilities have improved. No longer the Halifax, but the Lancaster bombers. We sink the Tirpitz with Lancaster bombers. By the time that happened, we'd lost 38 bombers and crews trying to sink the Tirpitz, which rather underscores, I think, the significance of the X-class submarine attack. The work of a few men in these tiny submersibles had crippled the pride of the German fleet for long enough to ensure that she played no meaningful part in the war for which she was intended before her end. There's a great quote from Ludovic Kennedy, who said that the Tirpitz lived an invalid's life and died a cripple's death, which is a pretty good outcome for a Nazi boat. The commanders of both of those successful X-class ships received the Victoria Cross, our highest honour. So here, second toast, bravo Lieutenants Donald Cameron, aged 27, and Basil Place, aged 22, and their gallant crews.
Well done and Godspeed, gentlemen. Couple things. Great story. Am I
Thank you.
correct in remembering, and our audience will see in a minute that no one has researched this, that the Tirpitz was actually built illegally in violation of the treaty after World War One? Is that right?
Most German activity in re-preparation for armaments and materiel, whether it's in the Ruhr, expansion of their navy, incursions on Danzig, now Gdansk, and so forth. Most of what Germany was doing was either outright illegal or pushing the boundaries of legality. And it's. Do you remember we told the story of the fighting ship sent through the post in the First World War? They
Yeah.
sent every nut and bolt.
The lake in
The Germans
Africa.
were
Yeah.
the Germans were very ingenious, but sometimes you can't hide a battleship. Well, I mean you can, but you know what I mean. So you dress things up as other things. The war is full of false funnels put on things to make one ship look like another ship,
Yeah.
rearranging the decks and hiding stuff on the decks to seek to look like something else. This, of course, went on way past the end of the Second World War, when the USS Pueblo was taken by the Koreans during Lyndon Johnson's presidency. It had guns on the deck, but they were covered with material to try and conceal the line that you
Yeah.
might see the outline. So they had these material on the guns. Not only did they not really know how to use them, the crew of the Pueblo, but in the cold and spray on the decks, that material had frozen to the guns, so weren't going to have much luck using them, even if you could get to them. So deception had played a long part, but yes, the Tirpitz's creation was one of the worst.
Well, and of course the Allies, we did a few things like that too. We had all the inflatable tanks at Calais to mislead the
But
Germans.
that's when we were already at war. That
Yeah.
wasn't in the
Well,
run-up.
that's true. Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, fair enough.
Although you guys did. You guys flew to this cold corner of North Maine and let their farmers drag ships with their tractors, their
Yes,
planes
and
with tractors. That's a
we
great
will
story.
put in the show notes that episode. It's a great episode. I want everyone to check it out, particularly because of the kind of tension between the US and Canada right now. I want people to know that we're longtime allies,
Right.
longtime cooperators with Canada and the UK. The other thing I wanted to mention about this story, though, Alex, and I think a lot of our viewers know I'm doing a multi-year project on war crimes and do they need the laws need to be modernized for the 21st century. I'm wondering about the midget submarine crew that were sitting on the deck of the Tirpitz when the explosions went off.
Right.
Do we know whether they, after the bombs went off, not warning the Germans, of course, did anything to try to save the ship, to try to save the other crew on the ship, or like what was their responsibility at that point, do you think?
Well, once you've surrendered, right? And you've given, but and I'm sure they were in some form of custody. But actually, I think whilst they were incredibly brave standing around on this deck, I
Yeah.
think they were transferred onto the. I think they were transferred off the boat before it blew.
Yeah, knowing that they might very well go down with the ship, they kept their mouth shut. Yeah. Well, that's an amazing story. Obviously, enormous stones, just like in our last episode. We got a great other story coming up, but I wanted to talk about a couple things first. So, as people know, we have a great new sponsor, the Wolf Project. For our listening viewers, I'm showing on the camera right now the Wolf Project hydrating aqua gel, which I use regularly. Alex is showing really the flagship product, the eye roller. Now, if anyone wants to investigate, go back and watch a few episodes back from me, and then look at how little the bags are under my eyes after using this for a couple months. It's been amazing. I also have used the face cleanser by the Wolf Project. These are, Alex, made with Swiss and Korean technology. They have thousands of excellent reviews, and they work. They've been working great for me.
They. So I'll give you my. So my friend Katie, who knows a lot about this stuff, heard about our sponsor, and she said to me, "Do you put it in the fridge?"
Interesting.
What are you talking about? I've used it. And she said, you should put this in the fridge before you apply it. And I did, and it's a game changer.
Wow. Okay. So it's great on its own, but if you refrigerate it, it's even better. And here's the best news of all, listeners and viewers. We have a discount code that works on Amazon in the UK and on the Wolf Project website, which is wolfproject.co. Gets you 20% off, and the code is H420. So H like hotel, the number four, and the word 20 spelled out. Works across Amazon and the Wolf website. And seriously, try it. It's I'm getting up there in years, but it's doing a lot to keep me not showing it, which I used to worry about it. I used to think that was vanity, but you know what? It works pretty well, and I'm not ashamed of it at all.
Agree. And I've got a 1-year-old, and I sleep terribly, and I'm still looking okay. So thank you, Wolf Project.
Also, we should let people know, Alex, that the chemistry here is all high quality, effective, proven ingredients. 95% of the formulations derive from natural ingredients, and been doing it for 2 months. Works great. No side effects, just goodness. Now, I have a movie review for everyone, Alex. I don't know if this
Go.
movie's available in the UK yet. H420, go get your discount, get your Wolf Project Men's Skincare. Also, the minute you get the chance, everyone, go check out a brand new movie called Sinners. Alex, do you know about this movie?
No.
Might not have hit the UK yet. It's by a great director. He directed the Black Panther movies. He directed a whole bunch of great stuff. It's called Sinners. It's got Michael B. Jordan, who was in the Wakanda movies. He plays twins amazingly, which is very difficult to do to play off somebody that's not actually there in the frame with you.
Right.
And it is scary. It is funny. It is a perfect recreation of American South in the 1920s. And if, like me, you're a music fan, it's an amazing journey through the history of American blues. Sinners,
Sinners.
minute you can see it, check it out. And listen, most important tip about Sinners, sit through the credits. I don't care if your popcorn's gone. I
Okay.
don't care if you have to go to the bathroom, sit through the credits.
It's got some end credit. So that playing twins thing, Martin Landau did that in a
Yeah.
good episode of Columbo. Double Shock, pretty sure. Where you try and work out which of the brothers, the twin brothers, was the killer. It's actually not my favorite episode of Columbo, but a lot of fans like it.
Alex, how frequently do you watch Columbo, would you say, in a year? How many Columbo episodes do you watch?
If I haven't done 20, it's a bad year. So I'm not watching them once a week, but certainly more than once a fortnight.
So I'm going to commit, I'm sure, blasphemy now, but I have started to revisit the Rockford Files, which James Rockford, not the detective that Columbo is, but still great
Yeah.
entertainment.
A lot of Columbo fans like the Rockford Files. I know this from online forums and chats. For me, it's like saying, "Hey, you like fine wine, and I too like beer." Like,
Yeah, I understand. I understand what you're saying, but at least I'm not recommending any of the Murder She Wrote franchise where there's a tiny little town in New England and a person dies every week. Move. Just move
eh,
to Boston,
but
everybody.
what you're describing now is Midsummer Murders in the UK. I
Yeah.
mean, this is just very, where this is not uncommon. But actually, I like all of these things really.
The next people we're going to talk about are not sinners, but let's hear about it.
So we, in episode 18 of the podcast, told one of our most successful stories online, and when
Based
I was
on,
telling them originally,
excuse me, Alex,
Lessons
based
from
on
History.
Lessons from History, Volume 1 by Alex Deane. We're
Much
going to get
obliged.
through all of them. We're two-thirds of the way through, by the way.
We're doing all right. Episode 18 was about the Calcutta Light Horse.
Yeah.
And so sometimes the brave are to be found in retirement, but who are ready to serve if and when the call comes. I have this story from one of the leading doctors in the United Kingdom who was rather proud of it, especially as he has South African heritage. My friend Richard told me this story about Volrad Voltmada, who was a dairy farmer. And he'd been a soldier with the Dutch East India Company and settled at Cape Town in his pastoral semi-retirement. And June, of course, to give up the hemispheres, June is midwinter where he is. And during a gale in June 1773, the ship De Jong Thomas was driven aground at the mouth of the Salt River. The Salt River feeds into Table Bay, which people may know. Yong makes me think of Geneva or Geneva, which is a reaction that many people are likely to have if they like a drink and they've been to Amsterdam. And I'm going to
Yeah.
have some Eau de Geneva for this story, which I like very much. It's been aged
Yes, and
five
after the
years.
story, we'll tell our story about Genève.
Yes, indeed. Actually, I think we might have more than one, but
Yeah. Right.
that's delicious and much better than the brandy, not rum, that I was having before. Um, anyway, the ship, the Young Thomas, began to break up after it was driven aground. Many of the people aboard the ship drowned, but many others were clinging perilously to the hull, which was seesawing to and fro on the sandbar it was stuck on, that it ran aground on, in the midst of a high gale. I mean, this
Mhm.
is dangerous territory. Things could hardly have been crueler, really, if you weren't trying to deliberately design a scenario to give false hope, because the ship wasn't actually far from shore. People could see it, but the water was icy. There was a cross current coming from from the Salt River into Table Bay. So you got icy water, cross current running, hot, strong cross current. The river mouth very strong, and almost everyone who attempted to get off the boat and swim to shore, which looked like a short distance that they could swim, were drowned.
Yeah.
And so the situation became desperate, and there was a crowd gathered upon the shore. And one should say some were gathered in sympathy, some were gathered hoping for flotsam and jetsam to wash up that they could take. But nobody did anything to help until Walter Marder arrived. And he was only there because he'd come to give food to his son. His son was a soldier sent to keep order on the beach in the crowd. So this had been going on long enough that the
Yeah.
law and order arrived to kind of keep the crowd in order, not to go and try and rescue someone, but just keep the crowd in line. So Waldemar and Waldemar alone, spurred by his conscience, acted. He rode out towards the sandbank upon his horse, and his mount swam powerfully to the ship's side, and he called out to people upon the wreck, "Two men jump into the water and take my horse's tail." And they did. He turned, pulled them back to shore. He turns and rides back out again. And he does this 7 times successfully.
Wow.
And he and his horse absolutely exhausted. And the wreck, they can see, they're resting. And the wreck begins to break up and collapse completely. And he gets back on his horse and he rides out another time, an 8th time. And seeing their chance for safety disappearing, not 2, but 6 men jump onto the horse and
Yeah.
seize it. And also, horse, Waltmarder, 6 men, all drowned.
Yeah.
Right? So there were 191 people aboard the Young Thomas. 53 survived the disaster, and 14 of those 7 trips had been rescued by Waltmarder. And there are lots of things in South Africa named after this hero. He's a medal, but my favourite, this is a good bit of nominative determinism, or determinism in nominative terms, is they named a tugboat after him. It's the perfect namesake. And here's the lesson from the young Thomas and the wreck, and the lives lost amongst it, from those who sailed in her. It's simple but hard, and harder still for those who find themselves in these situations in times it becomes relevant. The lesson is not all can be saved, and certainly not all can be saved at once. Sometimes, not only is the salvation of all concerned impossible, but if you don't understand that lesson, the gallant and brave will be dragged to their deaths by those they seek to rescue. Sometimes you have to wait, even if death is waiting for you too. This is why there is great dignity in the sacrifice and stoicism which is contained in the simple and enduring line, "Women and children first." So, our Supreme Court has recently ruled that a woman is a biological adult female. So, we are allowed to use such terms again, at least in my country. There is something very dignified in that, perhaps old-fashioned term, "women and children first," and I rather liked it. And I think the story of Walter Marder is one that deserves to be known.
There is dignity in that. Salute to him,
Mm.
and salute to his faithful steed, who, of course, could have no understanding of why they were being plunged into this icy water to swim out time and time again. But I don't know if it was a he or she, but the mount did it because of love for their rider, I think,
That's
and also
exactly right.
training.
That's exactly right. And
Same
good
thing with
training.
dogs. I've done a lot of work on law of armed conflict around the Israel-Gaza war, the homicidal Gaza invasion of Israel, and a lot of gallantry has been conducted by what they call furry missiles. You recall at one point when Alex was out, I had John Spencer, a global expert on urban warfare. He talked a lot about this. They have trained dogs to go into these tunnels and face the bullets and the IEDs and the fires first instead of humans, and they call them furry missiles. And apparently, the tunnel denizens on the other side are quite afraid of these furry missiles, and they have a pretty good survival rate, and they have a 100% bravery rate.
Yeah, no kidding. I think we've already told the story I told in my second book, Release the Bees, about people under siege releasing bees into a tunnel. How the hell are you supposed to fight bees?
In fact, that is a story that I talked about with John Spencer on this podcast. We'll put the episode number in the show notes. Animals. Somebody needs to write there's two books that are crying out to be written. One I've already talked about, which is the effects of alcohol on warfare and what
Mm.
might have happened, what might not have happened if there wasn't alcohol involved. And then the other one is the role of animals of all kinds in warfare. You know, you go watch the 300 and the Persians have elephants and all the like. And I guess there's truth to that. Like they really did roll in giant and tiny in the bees animals to intimidate and confound their enemies.
Yeah, I'd forgotten that you did that story without me, and I'm glad you did because it's a great story.
Oh, great story. We should do it again. Why not? We'll do it again sometime. But in the meantime, ladies and gentlemen, follow us on YouTube. Recommend us to your friends if you like it. Give us a good review on Spotify or Apple Music or wherever you get your podcast. And do utilize the comments functions because we do listen to people who make comments. In fact, part of the reason why I described some of our sponsors' products as opposed to just showing them on camera is that I got some comments by some folks that love the show, but they're visually impaired. And they said, can you give us a little bit
Oh,
more description of what you're talking about?
yeah, I got a couple of people asking me why I was in the beauty business, and I said, "Isn't it obvious?" But yeah, I didn't get that question.
That's fair. Well, we are going to be together in the District of Columbia in the next month or so. Maybe we'll try to do something from there. We'll see. And
Sounds
in any
good.
event, we'll see you all next time and check out the Wolf Project stuff and cheers.
Cheers.
All right.